Last week, we started a series called Emotions, and we started talking about our emotions because honestly, a lot of us don't stop and process our emotions. We tend to just bury them deep down inside or just move on to the next chapter, the next season, the next event, the next thing. But it's really important because our emotions are there for a reason. They are connected to the body, the mind, and the soul, and they're trying to tell us something. And we owe it to ourselves to find out what that is that our emotions are trying to tell us. Because if we don't, what we talked about last week is the result is trauma. I said this last week, quoting another doctor and author. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happened to you. The point is that trauma is emotions that got stuck and didn't get to move through. So what we're doing in this series is we're unpacking our emotions. And last week we started with the one that's everybody's favorite, happiness. And I would love for it if you went back and watched that and shared it with other people. So it's fitting that today we talk about the complete opposite of happiness, sadness. When it comes to sadness, there are actually a lot of different kinds of sadness. There's disappointment, which is when I didn't get what I wanted or what I believed I was entitled to. That's one type of sadness, just disappointment. But then there's another kind of sadness as well. There's grief. Now, grief is sadness over something or someone lost. And I'm not going to specifically talk about the kind of sadness that comes with grieving somebody, but if you're looking for help with that, I think you should go back and watch part 6 of our Signs series where we talked about when Jesus rose Lazarus. But today, I want to talk to you about the kind of sadness that lingers. What I wanted to really say when I wrote that line was I want to say the kind of sadness that never goes away. But at the same time, I believe that with God's help, all things are possible. So I'm going to put it the way I just said it. Let's talk about the kind of sadness that lingers. Now, some people they would describe this as depression. But I want to be very careful because sometimes when we adopt that word depression and label ourselves depressed, we tend to stay in that place. So I don't know. Let's talk about the kind of sadness that lingers, the kind of sadness that's very deep. Let's talk about, I don't know, your emo phase. Let's call it that. But it's the kind of sadness that grips you. It's the kind of sadness that isn't about one specific thing. It's a deep sadness and it's about a lot of different things. It's not even a kind of sadness that always makes you cry, but it's the kind of sadness that makes you at times not want to do anything. Do you know what kind of sadness I'm talking about? I mean, I've had seasons where I have felt this kind of sadness, seasons where I wasn't even really sure what I was sad about. I just knew I was. Not the kind of sadness where I was crying all the time, not the kind of sadness where I was necessarily grieving. It was the kind of sadness where I could still do everything. I was still going to work. I was still doing what I was supposed to do. I was still smiling and waving, but I don't know. It just seemed at times like I was in a fog. Sometimes it felt like I was stuck in something. It's kind of sadness I couldn't shake, and I didn't even know what exactly I needed in order to shake it. Do you know what I'm talking about? I think for a lot of us, it's the kind of sadness where we know we have it, but we just keep trying to push through. And when people ask us about it or people ask us if we're okay, we say things like, I'm fine, or I'm just tired. But under the surface, there is a very real heaviness, a sadness that we can't name. We don't know where it came from, and we really aren't sure how to get rid of it, but we know it's there and it's affecting our mind, our body, and our soul. And if you're a Christian, that kind of lingering sadness can feel especially confusing because we think to ourselves, man, I don't understand. I follow Jesus. I love Jesus. I love God. Shouldn't I be full of joy? And all the while we wonder, is this what life with God is supposed to feel like? Is there something going on that I'm not aware of? Is there something I need to do? Is there something I need to fix? Like where is this coming from? And God, where are you in the middle of this? If you felt like that, you aren't alone. And actually, in the Bible, there was someone who actually knew God very well, but felt the same way. His name was David. If you aren't privy to David or know anything about him, David was a shepherd turned king. He was the underdog who took down Goliath with the slingshot. He was called a man after God's own heart. And he wrote most of the Psalms that we have in our Old Testament. He led armies, he ruled nations, and he had a front row seat to some of God's greatest victories. But he also knew very deep pain. He was betrayed by his own son. He lost a child. He made huge mistakes that wrecked relationships. He experienced the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. The thing is that David was no stranger to sadness. And that's what makes his words so powerful because they're real. He's writing from a place of comfort. He's writing in the middle of the storm. And in the Old Testament, we have this book of Psalms, and this is this is David's, but keep in mind that when David wrote these things down, he wasn't writing the Bible. No one who ever wrote parts of the Bible were writing a Bible or ever knew that it would ever be collected and shared the way it is today. No one knew these documents would be collected and bound together to make up this book known as the Bible. So, as you're reading the Psalms, you really have to understand this is a snapshot of David's journal. I mean, these are his genuine and intimate thoughts, feelings, emotions, and prayers. And I want to look at one with you to try to better understand this emotion of sadness. Now, I want to look at Psalm 13 with you, which David wrote, and I'm going to be reading it from the NIV translation. It says this in verse 1. How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Now, automatically, you can already feel David's emotions in the midst of this. I mean, this is real. This is genuine. Four times David asked the question, "How long? How long, God? I mean, when is this going to go away? How long am I going to feel like this? Come on, God. Give me some kind of timeline here because I'm really hating feeling this way." And then he gets into really specific feelings, feelings you might have had or maybe even will have in the future. He asked God, "Will you forget me forever?" In other words, hey, God, hello, it's me, David. Hey, it's me, Michael. Where are you? How long, he says, will you hide your face from me? Translation, I'm not getting anything from you, God. I'm saying prayers, I'm looking up, and I'm not getting any answers. I'm not getting any clarification. I'm not getting any signs from you. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like in the middle of your season, in the middle of what you're going through, in the middle of your pain, in the middle of your deep, lingering sadness, you're looking up to God for answers and you're going, dude, how long is this going to go on? How many bad things are going to consecutively happen to me? I need some good news. I need a blessing. I need to know, God, just that you're there and that you've got me. I am looking up and I am saying, hey, dude, how long? How much longer are we going to take the losses? How much longer, how much deeper in this pit are we going to go? Because I need you and I don't know where you are. It's exactly how David felt. And sometimes that's exactly how you and I feel too. And then he says, how long must I wrestle with my thoughts? Now, this one really hits home for me. This is me. I mean, I can always imagine bad things happening to me before they're even real things. I mean, I'm the type of person that I wrestle with my thoughts all the time. I come up with scenarios on top of scenarios on top of scenarios before they're even realistic. I worry about things that haven't even happened yet. I do this terrible thing to myself that if something good is about to happen, I think of all of the ways that it can go wrong. That's me. I wrestle with my thoughts all the time and I make myself anxious about things that aren't even real yet. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you know exactly what David is talking about. Some of you know what it's like to wrestle with your thoughts. You overthink, you overimagine, you assume, and you create ideas and scenarios and experiences in your head that haven't even happened yet. And at times, it can feel quite maddening, can't it? We do that. And David wrestled with that. And he goes, how long, Lord? How long am I going to wrestle with my thoughts? And then he says, day after day, I have sorrow in my heart. Now, at this point, David is not sugarcoating anything here. He feels abandoned. He feels forgotten. He is overwhelmed by sadness and anxiety, and it won't quit. And you could hear it in the repetition. How long? How long? How long? That is the cry of someone stuck in lingering sadness. And maybe that's your cry too. And then he says something close, so close to my heart. He says, how long must my enemy triumph over me? Now, at first glance in reading that, you might think that David is talking about a physical enemy or the devil. But when I read that, in the context that it's presented in and what I've experienced, I think he's talking about something else. I think David is talking about the enemy in his head. I think David is referring to the enemy that he hears in here on his shoulder. And if you've dealt with lingering sadness, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I'll explain it to you. Somebody who deals with lingering sadness, with these kind of thoughts, people who wrestle with their thoughts, here's the thing, they don't wanna be sad. They don't wanna feel this way. They're not the ones telling themselves, "Well, maybe the world would be a better place without me." What it feels like when you have lingering sadness, when you're wrestling with your thoughts, it feels like there is an enemy on your shoulder telling you, tempting you, pushing you. What it feels like is it feels like being under attack in your mind and in your soul, and it's exhausting. It is debilitating, and it is a struggle. I mean, when David says, how long will I wrestle with my thoughts? It truly is a physical game that is happening in your heart, in your mind. Literally, it's affecting your physical body. It feels like wrestling with somebody, even though you're not doing anything physical at all. And he says, "Man, Lord, how long is the enemy in my mind? How long is the enemy in my soul? How long am I going to go through this fight, this imaginary, spiritual, but very real fight that's happening deep down inside of me? I want it to end, God. Man, how real is that? How true is that? How many times have we all been there in our soul?" Now, I want to hit time out because I feel like we're getting very, very real here. And I know what some of you are thinking right now as you're watching this. You're thinking, man, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Because a lot of times when that wrestling match with your enemy is happening in your head, you feel so alone. You feel so isolated. You feel like no one else can understand. But we all go through it at different points in our life. And so you're not alone. God is with you. Others, like myself, we are going through it too. And then David, with one last plea, says something so heartbreaking. This is in verse 3 of Psalm 13. He says, look on me and answer, Lord my God, give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. He prays to God, God, look at me and answer my cry for help. Let me know you're here. Give light to my eyes. He's saying, help me to see things clearly. Help me to take the scales off my eyes. Wake me up from this slumber and help me to see things clearly. And then he says something so terrifying. He says, or else I will sleep in death. I think David was so sad that he thought, this is going to kill me. God, if you don't answer my prayers, this is going to be the end of me. Man, we have all felt like that at times where we felt like what we were going through, the emotions, the pain, the deep lingering sadness in our hearts, we thought, man, this is gonna be what smokes me. This is gonna be the end of me. And then David says, and God, if that happens, he says this in verse 4, and my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. David knew the reality of what would happen, that the enemy would rejoice and say, yes, I overcame him. And that his physical enemies, the people who were against him, would rejoice and celebrate. And David did not want to lose this battle. David did not want to be sad anymore. David was pleading with God for help. And then he says something so hopeful, so full of faith. He says this in verse 5, he says, but I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. And in verse 6, he says, I will sing the Lord's praises, for he has been good to me. David, in the midst of his sadness, in the midst of what he was feeling, he believed in God's love. He ultimately still turned to God's love. David looks up to God and he literally says, I trust your unfailing love. He's saying, God, you've always been good to me. I have always been after you. The salvation I've experienced has made me so happy, has changed my life. God, I have complete trust in you. And so, in the midst of my lingering sadness, God, I will not stop singing your praises. And I will keep turning to you. I will keep worshiping you. I will keep following you because I believe that with your help, I will not lose this fight. David did two things in this psalm that I thought were so important and that I try to apply to my own life. The first thing is this: he honestly confessed how he felt. David was brutally transparent about his feelings. He literally says, If I don't get help, this is going to kill me. And I don't want to lose this fight. So I'm saying it. God, I am struggling with sadness. Maybe for one person here or for one person in the future, you're watching this and all you need to hear today is that it is normal to feel the way you feel. And you need to face it. You need to confess it. You need to reach out for help. You need to tell someone, hey, I am not okay. I am sad and it will not go away. I am wrestling with my thoughts. And in order to move forward, I need help. Because if I don't get help, I am going to lose this battle. And I don't want to lose this battle. I don't want the enemy in my head, and I don't want the enemy out there, and I don't want the enemies and the people who are against me. I don't want them to get to celebrate that victory. I am standing up for myself. I am standing up for my own well being. And I am saying that I am struggling and I need help in order to win. Let me tell you something. Many of us believe that it is a defeat to admit that we need help, to admit that there is a problem, but it is not. It is not weakness to admit that you need help. It is bravery. It is a brave thing to reach out to someone who loves you and to tell them that you are struggling with your thoughts. that you have a deep lingering sadness that won't go away and you don't know how to fix it. And it's not grief, it's not disappointment, it's something else. You don't know what it is, but it's affecting your life day to day. It's affecting your sleep, it's affecting your relationships with other people, it's affecting you physically, and you need help because you're scared to death that if you don't get help, that this is going to end you. Let me tell you something, if that's you, it's a brave thing to claim it, to point it out, and to ask someone for help. That's a brave thing to do. And for somebody here watching this, what you need to know is that you are not alone. It is normal to feel the way you feel, and you need to ask for help because there's somebody out there and there's somebody up there that does not want to see you defeated in this battle. The second thing that David did was this: he committed to trusting and praising God. They don't miss that. He didn't even just do it once. he, he didn't go to a revival and get it all out of his system. He didn't pray about it once and suddenly he was healed. He says, God, I'm trusting you, which means he understood that it was a process. He understood that it was a daily decision. He said, my heart is rejoicing. I will choose to sing. He understood that this was a battle because the truth of it is too often we just want a quick fix to sadness. But the truth is that there's no simple solution to sadness or any of the emotions that we're going to talk about in this series. Emotions are fluent, they move, they intensify, they die down. And then 5 years later, on the anniversary of the event, or when you see something on TV, it triggers you and it brings you right back to that moment. The thing is that wrestling with these emotions are very real and they can ebb and they can flow. But David's was idea was that if I'm committed to constantly trusting and praising God, I will be better for it. I will be able to push through this. I would put it this way: in a world spinning out of my control, I need to be tethered to something that is in control, and that is God. God is that constant variable, God is that anchor. God is the thing that we must tether ourselves to, attach ourselves to, put our trust in, put our faith in. He is the thing that we have to follow through the battle so that no matter what happens, whether it's a good day or a bad day, whether we're blessed or we're cursed, whether we're happy or we are deeply sad, we can continue to move forward. That is the way that we ensure that the enemy does not win. So David did two things. David was honest about what he was going through. But the second thing was is that he tethered himself to God. He committed to praising and trusting him. And then time went on. David writes this and he remember in Psalm 13 he doesn't find any solutions. He just puts it all on paper or whatever it was he was transcribing this on. He puts it all out there and then he leaves. And then later on in Psalm 34, chapters later, we have no idea how much time has passed between when he writes Psalm 13 and Psalm 34. But in Psalm 34 verse 18 he says this: the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Now, we have no clue what David's journey looked like, but we do know this. We know he continued to praise and trust God. We know that he cried out for help. And maybe God provided that help, or maybe he went and found counsel and sought out practical help. We don't know. But what we do know is that because he faced it and because he continued to rely on God, later on, he was able to claim as a fact God is close to the brokenhearted. David came to the conclusion that God cared. David came to the conclusion that God was empathetic, that God was a comforter, that God was a God of love. And he felt that he could say confidently that those who turn to God would be saved. That's so important. He claimed, God saved my heart. God saved me. And he came near to me. And when I was crushed in spirit, when I was deeply, deeply sad, when I was wrestling with my thoughts, I relied on him. And it wasn't easy, it wasn't an instant fix. But I turned to him, I tethered to him, I relied on him, and God showed up for me. Let me tell you something. If that's you, if there is a deep lingering sadness in you that you wrestle with, you're wrestling with your thoughts, you're wrestling with this emotion in your heart, I want you to know this morning you are not alone. I have been there through seasons of my life. I have felt it. It is real. And it is not your fault. It is not something that you did to yourself. It is a mix of so many complicated things that you've been through in life. But I want you to hear me very, very clearly. If it is left undealt with, it could very well get worse. And I don't want to see you lose that battle. I think you and I both know that if left unkept, you know, and I know, and David knew where this ended. I want to first and foremost say that if you're going through that, you're not alone. The second thing I want to say is that it is a brave thing to seek out help. It is a brave thing to seek out a counselor, a therapist. It is a brave thing to pick up the phone and to call that friend and to text that friend and say, hey, I'm not doing well today. And I could really use a friend. I could really use you, dad. I could really use you, mom. I could really use you, sister, brother, whoever it may be. It's a brave thing to admit that you're not okay. And I would strongly encourage you to seek out that help. But along with seeking out that help, I want to also tell you that though you can do a million practical things, which would be good for your health, your physical, mental, emotional health, at the same time, you also need God's help. And I do believe that with God's help, that lingering sadness can be a sadness that can go away. That sadness can be replaced and filled with the Spirit and can turn into joy. I believe that with God's help, we could turn those voices in our head off and turn on the voice and the Spirit of God. I believe that in God's name, that can happen, that God can win that battle, but we have to turn to him. We have to put our faith in him. We have to trust him fully 100% in every area of our life. And it's not a quick fix. It's not just a prayer we pray. It's not just a service we attend and an altar call that we answer. It is a daily decision to put our faith in him and to trust him, to trust his teachings, to take the reality of God that we find in Jesus Christ in the New Testament scriptures and apply that and live that out. Jesus himself said, I guarantee you in this life, you will have troubles, but it's okay. I have overcome the world. This is why Jesus said that the yoke of this world is heavy, but his yoke is light, and that he will come alongside of us and help us carry the weight of the world. Jesus is not against you. Jesus is for you. And he wants to see you well. He wants to see you happy. So when you feel that deep, lingering sadness, speak up. He's here for it. He wants you to know he's here. He wants to hear your prayer, and you can lay it on and you can be 100% genuine and honest with him. You don't have to sugarcoat it at all. But at the same time, put your faith in him, follow him, live out Jesus in this world. And what I believe all of us will see if we do this on a daily basis, we will all be better for it. Because I believe with all my heart that when you follow Jesus, Jesus makes your life better and makes you better at life. And he, the king, he can also help us deal with the emotion of sadness. Let me pray for you. Father God, I know that there's somebody watching this and they know exactly what I'm describing. They know they have felt exactly what I'm talking about, and they maybe even right now have that deep lingering sadness. God, if there is anybody who's watching this and they feel that way, I pray that you would just touch their soul right now, that you would help them know that they are not alone, that I myself have felt exactly how they felt. I too have wrestled with my thoughts, and there's nothing broken in them, there's nothing wrong with them. It is an enemy that has come after us and is choosing to torment us and would like to see us fail. But God, you do not want to see us fail because you love us that much. And so, God, this morning we hear you and we need to commit this morning that we are going to reach out. We're going to reach out to a friend. We're going to reach out to a therapist. We're going to finally go see a counselor. And we're going to start to work through this with a professional, with somebody who can help us, God, because we need that. We need to claim this and we need to expose it. And we need to not just live with a label of anxiety or depression or sadness, but there is something we can do about it. We need to go to work on it right now. But God, we need to tether ourselves to you. We need to put our faith in you. We need to follow you through this because it's only with your help and your strength that we can overcome this battle. So God, will you help us do that? We help us to live godly lives, lives of integrity, life of love, life of forgiveness and grace, but also resilience and confidence in our identity in you, God. Will you help us to do that today? And it won't be fixed today, but with your help, we will begin the journey of healing that we need to begin. God, we love you. We put our faith in you. We pray these things in your name. Amen.